This is a D6 generation pip. One of those dots on the side of a six-sided die. Yeah, a pip. A short pip. Little something. About anything gaming related. Sometimes featuring Craig, sometimes featuring Russ. We'll see what's coming up today. Hey everyone, welcome back to another D6G pip. Thought we'd take a little break from our regularly scheduled Roleplay 8 Charisma and sneak in another general gaming pip here. This time around, I thought I'd talk a little bit about, do kind of a older school achievements in gaming and just sort of share some of the things I've been playing lately. I did want to cover the bulk of today's episode will probably be about sort of a return to the table episode. I think I mentioned a couple of pips ago, that and in reorganizing my gaming space, I found a lot of older games I hadn't played in a while, and I thought it might be kind of fun to get the older games back to the table, particularly some of the ones I wasn't really sure if they held up well, and decide if I wanted to cull them from my collection or keep them. We had a great success with Smash Up. That was sort of the first one I talked about. Then we had not so a good result with Mage Wars. Talked about that a couple pips ago. And today I want to talk a little bit about Krosmasters Arena. So Krosmasters Arena, I think I talked briefly about this game. It's got a lot of amazing little figures that come with it. They're kind of like, I don't want to compare them to Pops, but they're like Pops in that they're the same sort of material, but they're much more anime looking and chibi. They've got very much a chibi look to them. And there's a bunch of these cute little creatures, people, humanoids, I guess is the best way to describe them. In the core set, Krosmasters Arena, I believe you get 8. And then they had, at their height, which was around 2014, 2015, you could get these little expansions everywhere. My kids fell in love with sort of the look of them, as did I. And so we grabbed a bunch of them, and I had most of them. I think I have something like, 50, 40 figures, something like that. And so I went through it again. I found it, and I was like, wow, what should I do with this? And it was kind of spanning several boxes, taking up a lot of space. And I was kind of trying to decide what to do with Krosmasters Arena. My youngest daughter, who's now older, she's 17. My oldest daughter is in college now. So my youngest daughter and I, we play, we have a Sunday thing where we go out for bagels in the morning, and then we play a board game every Sunday. It's sort of our little ritual. And we thought, well, let's try Krosmasters Arena and just see what we think. And we played it 3 weeks ago now and really enjoyed it. Played it like 2 or 3 games in a row that day. We're like, wow, this is really fun. Really enjoyed it. Had much more fun with it than we expected. And then so again, the following weekend, we played it again and we decided to keep it. And I decided to reorganize it. And I reorganized in such a way, I have 2 Krosmaster Arena sort of official game boxes, right? I have the original Krosmasters Arena box, and I think there's a new one now, Krosmasters Arena 2.0. So this game is still out there. You can still get it if you're interested in this sort of thing. So I have Krosmasters Arena, the original box, and then I also have the Frost expansion, which was another set that came with one more dude, but another game board and some more tokens and other gear that expands sort of what it would be like to fight in the cold and gives a lot more spells related to cold and spells or cold effects and little companions that can join your Krosmasters that are freezy, that kind of thing, ice penguins, things like that. So I have both those boxes, and I was able to, using the magnet washer technique that I think I've spoken about in the past on the show with my miniature games, I was able to do it to all the Krosmasters and put the magnetic, sort of the flexible magnetic, not cloth, but like that, the magnetic sheet in the bottom of the box, glue it down there, and then put washers on all the Krosmasters and stick them on, and able between those 2 boxes to get all the rules and boards in one box, and all the Krosmasters I own, all like 30 or so of them, or 40 of them, I think it is, into another box. So it's actually great because now they're in the original boxes. They look kind of nice, and they're all one spot. So I was really pleased with that. Much easier to store on my shelf. So back to the game and why it's probably worth taking a look at. So Krosmasters Arena, it is a 2 to 4 player game, but it's one of those 4 player games where you're really on teams. So it's really a 2-sided game where you're either going to play with teams or it's head to head. So the game really shines, I think, head to head. But the idea behind it is you're going to build this little squad of Krosmasters, basically little chibi sort of magic-wielding humanoid creatures, and you're going to duke it out. Now, there's a couple innovative things about this game that I like, in addition to it just being arena combat. One of them is just how great it looks on the tabletop. So in addition to the amazing, I guess PVC is what you call them, figures who are fully pre-colored, with all their different parts, look like they're assembled out of material that was that color originally. I don't think that's true. Maybe it is. I don't know how they do these assemblies, but they look really great. They look like they literally jumped off the pages of an anime a Magna comic kind of thing. They look fantastic. And so you got these amazing figures already. You got this very colorful grid colored game board going on, which is also cool. But then you also have these really cool 3D cardboard terrain pieces. And it's the classic move where, let's say you have a pine tree, and one piece of the cardboard is slotted in such a way that you can put the other piece of cardboard, perpendicular to the slot. And now you've got a freestanding, sort of three-dimensional tree, out of two pieces of cardstock stuck together, right? And you've got these trees, you got these little bushes, and you've also got cubes that you build out of cardboard, out of four little pieces of cardboard that you sort of glue together. You can push them together without glue. Strongly recommend gluing them because they'll just fall apart if you bump them. So glue all those together. So you've got these little crates that go around the board in 3 dimensions. You got these little shrubbery that go around the board in 3 dimensions. And of course you have these trees. And if you have the expansions, you might have like winter versions of these things. And by the way, the board is double-sided. So the original board is double-sided with 2 different arenas. And the printing on the actual grid has gameplay elements on it. So for example, there are little icons that are basically shops that you can go buying things in. And those are located in different spots. There are prearranged icons that tell you where to put coins, which your characters can pick up to spend in the shops. There are icons that indicate where other things go and where the bushes go and where the trees go. So there's no real thinking about terrain deployment. The board has it all on there. So it's double-sided to give you 2 different versions of that. One of the sides, I think, has lava on it. So it's got some impassable places, which makes it a little trickier. And then if you get the Frost expansion, you've got yet another double-sided board, this time both winter-themed and a much more cardboard that's all winter-themed trees, winter-themed shrubs, and winter-themed crates. Actually, they're not crates in the winter one. They're actually ice blocks, which is sort of interesting, that you can shove around on the ice and move into your opponents and things like that. So looks fantastic. It's one of those games that just has fantastic table presence. Now, the other thing you get is a bunch of cards, and each of these cards has artwork on one side, cool looking, anime artwork of your Krosmaster, the associated Krosmasters, 1 card for each Krosmaster. And when you buy expansions, you get more of these cards, 1 for each guy or gal. And on the other side are all the stats for your Krosmaster, right? Now, back in the day when we were really into this, they had a huge presence at gaming conventions like Gen Con, and they had a lot of con exclusives. And I think we ended up buying this pack of oversized cards that are like 4x5, so they're pretty big, that are each of the Krosmasters that were ever produced. So basically, I have this giant deck of these huge cards, which really makes the game pop additionally on the table. Because the nice thing is, the board's not overly huge. So you can play the board on a kitchen table and still have extra space. It's not a table hog, which is actually kind of nice. So I have those really cool cards. You don't need them. You can definitely do the cards that come in the box. And I will say that everything in the box, even without all the con exclusives that we ended up collecting over the years, the game still looks fantastic. Now, gameplay is really pretty straightforward, but there are some interesting, innovative mechanics in here. In terms of actual movement, it's pretty simple. You're going to activate your whole side. I'm going to activate my whole side. Each Krosmaster has sort of basically action points. You essentially have movement points that allow you to move a certain distance, and you have action points that allow you to do stuff like cast spells or swing a sword, that kind of thing. And they're all sort of the same sort of formatted actions, so there's no material rules difference between casting a spell or swinging a weapon or shooting a bow. It's just basically a row of information that tells you how it works. The one part about it that I would say is a little bit, there are 2 parts of the game mechanics that are a little fiddly. One, because you can intersperse spending movement points with action points at any time. So in other words, you can move 2 squares, spending 2 movement points, and then you can cast one of your spells, which may cost like 2 action points, and then move 2 more squares in a different direction, and then spend 1 more action point or 4 more action points, shooting your bow, and then you can move another square. And some of these characters have 4 or 5 movement points and 5 or 6 or 8 action points. And so keeping that tracked in your head can be a little confusing for you and your opponents. That's the only part that I would say is a little fiddly. So there's that part going on. And then the other part going on is, after you do all the other thing that's a little bit, takes a little bit of practice, is that each of the attacks or actions have iconography on it that indicate Does it need line of sight? Is it, does it attack in a straight line, or can you see around? Can it curve? Is it an area of effect? And there's different icons that tell you that, and you got to go look them up. So that's also a little fiddly. But once you get that down, the game plays really pretty well. And my favorite mechanic of the game is how you win. So they have these tokens. I forget what they're actually called. I think they're called Glory or something, but these GG tokens, basically good game. I always think of good game, but there's these GG tokens. And each player starts the game with 6 of these GG tokens. And then there's also one additional GG token that's put sort of to the side of the board in the middle. And that's sort of like the free GG. Now, throughout the course of the game, there are different ways that you can steal the GG tokens from your opponent and take them yourself. And the game ends when one player is completely out of these GG tokens. Now, this initially sounds like it might suffer from the same problem I had concerns about in Mage Wars, which is, well, what if no one ever does anything to pull GG tokens from the other player? Wouldn't the game theoretically go on forever? Well, no, because theoretically it could, but there is a timer mechanic which is pretty interesting. So a couple things happen to prevent this. One is whenever you can, there's several ways you can get these GG tokens. The first thing you can do is you can try to kill your opponent's Krosmasters. So the additional stat that Krosmasters have is health, of course. And when their health is reduced to 0, they are removed from the table and out of the game. When a Krosmaster dies, your opponent gets the number of GG equal to the Krosmaster's level. We didn't talk about levels, but each Krosmaster has a level number in the upper right-hand corner, and this level is important because when you're creating your little Krosmaster crew, which you can do a variety of ways, each player can bring their own to the table, you can do a drafting mechanic, you can randomly distribute them, whatever, but there are some rules about building out your Krosmasters. One, some of their names are color-coded, and some of the color coding means this is a unique character, so you can't have it more than one in your list. But also, your total level of all your Krosmasters you're bringing to the table has to be less than equal to 12, right? So there's a couple different things you can do with this. Now, some of the Krosmasters, super powerful, they're like a 6 level, right? So already they're taking up half your band for this one dude. And the cheapest Krosmasters, I want to say there might be a couple 2s out there, but most of them are 3 or 4s, right? So you can definitely do 4 level 3 Krosmasters, or you could do 3 level 4 Krosmasters, or you could do a 6 and 2 3s, or however you want to break it down, right? There's all kinds of options here. And the bigger your collection, the more choices you have, of course, which is great. But what's interesting about this is if you were to lose one of those level 6 Krosmasters, right? Since you have to give that many GGs to your opponent when you lose that Krosmaster, if you start with 6 GGs, which you do, you just won the game. Potentially, right? So killing that one Krosmaster could flip the game and end it for you, but there are other ways you can get GGs as well. So dotted throughout the board, there are stores, and there are also a bunch of these little coins dotted across the tabletop that your characters can spend action points when standing on them to pick them up. This puts them in your bank. Now, these coins can be spent a couple different ways. Whenever one of your characters gets to a store, they can also spend an action point to go shopping. Now, off to the side of the table, there are piles, massively tall piles of these amazing tokens that have different kinds of items you can buy from the shop. And there are 3 different cost levels and coins. Some are cheap, some are medium cost, and some are very high. And you flip over the top couple of each of these different price range stacks to indicate what kind of things are currently for sale in the store. And you can spend the coins you've collected to buy those items. Or if you've saved up 10 coins, you can spend 10 coins to buy 1 GG coin. Now, if you remember when I said you start the game up, there's 1 GG coin sort of in the middle of off to the side of the table. The first time someone buys a GG, they get that one. After that, whenever they buy GG, you have to give them one of yours and give it to them, right? So I can literally, even if I never fight you, I can slowly strip you of GG with coins. But there's another timer mechanic as well in the GGs, and that is at the start of each player's turn, the player whose turn it is rolls 2 of these custom dice that come with the game. Now, these custom dice, if you got the Kickstarter or anything, there's all kinds of cool colored ones, but even in the basic game, they're white dice with black markings, but they're all custom icons. And these icons do different things. Some of these icons give you the dodge ability. Some of these icons give you the critical hit ability. Some of these icons, all kinds of things, right? One of them is like a wild card. You can pick the side. And at the start of your turn, you roll 2 of these dice. Now, depending on the icons you get, allow you to give whatever ability you roll to one of your characters, right? Or you can give each of the dice that rolled an icon, you can give that ability at roll to different characters. So you might say, well, this guy's going to get critical hit this turn, and this guy's going to get dodge this turn. You also have the option of not using one of the dice and getting some coins, or you have the option of not using both the dice and getting 3 coins. So you get 1 coin if you choose not to use one of the dice, 3 coins if you use none of the dice. But here's the tricky part. If the dice roll doubles, right, both players have to give a GG up to the bank, leaves the game, right? So there is this timer because each turn both players are rolling dice, and every time someone rolls doubles, all players lose a GG. And remember, the game ends when you're at a GG. So if you start with 6 GG, and at the very beginning of the game, someone rolls doubles, now both players only have 5 GG left, right? So we're already getting down there. And if you kill a 5 or a 4 Krosmaster, or that kind of thing can happen. Now, there are some games where you don't see doubles very often, and it comes down to just fighting. But there are some games where the doubles happen pretty frequently. So this timer, while it's not a permanent timer, and it could go on forever theoretically, the timer's always there in your head. And as soon as you see a double, you're like, oh, crap, I forgot about that. And so pretty much you're going to be working on winning the game because you realize you can't just goof around forever. That combined with the ability to buy GG. And by the way, buying the GG is very powerful because, as I mentioned, if you lose your level 6 Krosmaster, if you haven't done anything to get extra GGs, you're out of the game instantly. But let's say if I bought a GG, now I've got 7. So now if I lose my level 6 Krosmaster, I'm still in the game with 1 GG left. Right? So that's really my favorite mechanic of the game. I thought that was really pretty clever how they did that. That plus all the different things you can buy really makes the game interesting. And the replayability here is fantastic because every Krosmaster has so many different abilities. And each Krosmasters have a lot of synergies. So the abilities can work well together. For example, there's this one guy who's based clearly on Conan the Barbarian, who is awesome. Very dangerous. He's got like 25 health, which is crazy. Most Krosmasters have like 6 health, 7 health, maybe 8 health. This guy's got 25 health, which is broken, except all of his abilities, all of them, are very powerful, but also they cause him to take wounds, right? So as Conan goes out there and does his thing, his name's not Conan, by the way, but I think of him as Conan. As he does his thing, he is doing massive damage, but he's also on a timer himself because he's slowly wounding himself. Now, if you also happen to have a Krosmaster in your list who heals, well, now you've got a pretty interesting combination, and your opponent's going to have to really target that healer to really make sure Conan doesn't do too much damage, right? So some really interesting combinations going on there. I'm just tip of the iceberg here. If you've got a decent collection of these guys, or if you see these guys, again, you can go buy them now. They're on Amazon still. Krosmaster Arena 2.0, not very different from what I described to you, just some tweaks here and there. But more importantly, if you see this stuff and someone's dumping it at a yard sale or at a gaming sale, I think this might be worth picking up. They look awesome. They're great things to have on your shelf, but also it's a really fun little game. So definitely check out Krosmaster Arena. That's our return to the table, and we decided that one's a keeper, and it's staying in my collection on prominent display in the middle of my my gaming shelves here. All right, so I mentioned at the beginning of this episode that it was going to be a little bit of achievements in gaming. So we already talked about Krosmasters Arena, which I've been playing, but I also wanted to share that we've been playing some video games lately. Oh, one other thing, though, before we go to the video games, also I'm excited to say that, we mentioned a couple times on the show that we've been playing a 4-player map-based campaign based on Song of Ice and Fire. We played one full to its conclusion version of this back in spring. Had such a great time, and I think I mentioned we use Roll20 to kind of manage the map online, so we can all do our moves and between game stuff online, and then we play in person using a Song of Ice and Fire from Cool Mini or Not games. Excuse me. Sorry about that. A Song of Ice and Fire, Cool Mini or Not models. And that's been going great. And as I said, we finished the first campaign. We started our second campaign, tweaked the rules slightly. I think we did an episode about how we tweaked them. And it's about to end. We just had a game where Craig actually got enough victory points where I think he can buy enough castles now to get him to the final victory point conditions of the campaign and win the whole thing. Turned out that once Daenerys got dragons, none of us could figure out a way to deal with those dragons, and we all got hammered pretty well by them. Except for John. John managed to kill the dragons, but Joe's army, the Lannisters' army, and my army, the Free Folk army, we really couldn't figure out a way. I think with more practice, I might be able to, but the shock and awe of the dragons showing up really got us in trouble, which is really fluffy and pretty much follows the show pretty effectively. In any case, So we really enjoyed that, and you listen more. I'm sure Craig will be back on the show to talk about that and what we thought of the final version of that and final thoughts on that. But we enjoyed it so much, but we wanted to kind of change things up. I think we're going to take those core map-based rules and then change them or alter them to work for Star Wars Legion. And we're going to try the same sort of thing with Star Wars Legion now. We happen to have 4 fully painted Star Wars Legion armies. I have the clones and the droids. And of course, Craig has, the Empire and the Rebels from the OG stuff. So pretty excited to try that out. And John and Joe are huge Star Wars fans, so I don't think this will be a hard sell. Trying to decide if I should slip Armada in there too and have Armada games between, but that might be just asking for trouble. Too much complication. Now you got 2 games you got to remember the rules for. Maybe that's a little bit heavy. So maybe we'll just stick with Legion the first time, get them all ramped up on that. If they like it, maybe we'll try to sneak Armada in there. But in any case, more to come on all that. So keep listening for episodes about A, how the Song of Ice and Fire campaign ended, and then B, assuming we can sell this whole Star Wars plan to everybody, I'll share with you what we do and what we tweak in the campaign system to work with Legion. Because I'm really curious. By the way, if anybody out there has any good rules for Legion-based map-based campaigns, please send them along because I would love to see them for some ideas. Because I'm thinking them through. I have some ideas, but I also love to see things people have already tried and maybe have some good success or failure stories with, so we know what to try and what also to avoid. Was always good tips. So that's what's going on with our miniature gaming. But also, I wanted to share some video game stuff. I have been playing a couple different video games, but I really am excited about. I got sucked back into, not back into. That's wrong. So I played through this spring. I think I talked on the show before. I really enjoyed Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I still have to go back and do the DLC. I haven't done Ireland yet, and I was going to wait until Siege of Paris comes out, which I think just dropped like last week. So with both of those out, I'm going to return to it because I do enjoy just the game so much. I don't mind doing more of it. But also, I found in the prior Assassin's Creeds, specifically the recent ones, that I do enjoy this sort of the, my brother would call it the ancient aliens part of Assassin's Creed, where there's these aliens that are really the gods of all the different, all the different mythos are really actually these ancient aliens that have done something here. And so whenever you go back to the future in Assassin's Creed, you're dealing with this whole ancient alien thing. And they did a great job in Odyssey of the DLC really added depth to that story and made it really interesting. And you could tell at the end of the first game of Valhalla, they set it up so there'd be a little more to tell. And you can clearly see that's probably coming in the DLC. So I was kind of waiting for both of them to drop so I'd kind of get the full story. Because I think Siege of Paris is like their big putting a bow on this whole thing. And so I think we'll see all that there. So I'm excited to get through that. But I wanted to wait for both of them to drop and kind of jump in and get the full, sort of play it till it's done. But meanwhile, while I was waiting for that, I had gone ahead and bought Cyberpunk 2077 back when it first came out, but I was still in the middle of Assassin's Creeding actually. And so I didn't start it. I just had it there. It was sitting there. I pre-ordered it. So I got all the pre-order, sort of things. And it was just sort of sitting there. And then I heard all of the grumbling about a lot of bugs and it wasn't working very well and it wasn't very stable. And so I decided, well, I'm not going to rush it then. I'm just going to sit there, percolate. I'll let these guys update it. So went through all the Assassin's Creed stuff, did all that. And then this summer, had a lot of summer activities, but I had a little time. And so I thought I'd dive back in. So just about a week ago, I started to try out Cyberpunk 2077. And I have to say, I'm really enjoying it, right? So for those of you who haven't been following the Cyberpunk stuff, this is a game by the folks who made The Witcher, particularly The Witcher 3. So they had a lot of passionate fans because The Witcher 3 is generally regarded as one of the best, fantasy RPG console PC titles of its generation, and certainly in the top 10 of all of them. And so people had very high expectations for Cyberpunk because now you're going into a futuristic, dystopian, corporate greed sort of world with cool, huge amounts of body modding happening and cyber everything. And, that's a really cool concept, really cool world. Not as much going on in those spaces as there is in fantasy, for example. So it's kind of neat to see someone of the caliber of CD Red going in and doing this sort of thing, the company that makes The Witcher. So thought it was cool to see that, and I was bummed that it got a poor reception, but I was excited to jump in, and I have to say I'm really enjoying it. And yes, there are bugs, And I should say also, I'm playing it on an Xbox Series X, so I'm playing it on pretty high end hardware. And I do understand there's been a lot of patches, so I've waited long enough where they've patched a lot of these things. So I think the bugs I'm seeing are a lot less than the bugs that people saw on launch day. So it's already a lot better. The game does look phenomenal on a Series X. I have to say, it looks really, really good. The city looks good. The characters all look good. The city feels populated. It feels like there's people everywhere. I mean, it very much feels like Grand Theft Auto in a modern sci-fi sort of city. So think Blade Runner, think Grand Theft Auto and Blade Runner had a baby, and that's basically Cyberpunk, the city, when you're walking around. It looks awesome. So that part's great. The game's also extremely ambitious from both a storytelling, world building, from several places. Storytelling, world building, as well as the way the sort of the style they chose. Everything stays first person, but everything is fully animated. Like the characters they don't just stand there and talk at you. They actually act out. Like the actors that played this stuff were fully mocapped, and they act it out. And you'll be talking to a guy, and he'll be sitting in a rolling chair, and he'll be rolling back and forth across the room while he talks to you. And the characters are smoking while they talk to you, and they're drinking while they talk to you, or they're eating Chinese out of a cardboard box with chopsticks, and the food's actually making it into their mouth, sort of thing. Like they didn't spare, like there was really a desire to make this look and feel like a first person movie with real actors. And I think they never, very rarely, I think there's a couple for narration and pacing purposes where they cut away, but everything's done like in a single shot. Like for example, these little things like catch me, and I don't know why, but like I'm at a storage facility, a garage door to storage facility, and someone hands me a key to unlock this thing. Now, I know in most video games, when you unlock a door like that, the character just stands in front of the door, you click X to unlock it, and the door maybe rolls up in front of you, but your character never moved. But no, in Cyberpunk, your character actually, from your perspective, kneels down. You see your hands reach out. You see you grab the padlock, turn the lock, unlock, or remove the padlock, pull the door up. Like it's very immersive. Like none of those steps getting in and out of a car. Everything's fully animated, like it doesn't seem to pass by pretty much anything, which is really very ambitious and really cool. But I think because of that ambition and because of that coolness and really trying to get every little detail in there, they definitely, they're still working through some of this stuff. I do still see bugs, but most of the bugs are really related to small sort of quality of life issues that are annoying, definitely annoying, especially in a AAA title from a publisher of this caliber. But again, it's almost like watching a gymnast really try the most difficult routine possible and not get a perfect score. And you're like, wow, she's such an amazing gymnast. I can't believe she didn't get a perfect score, but you got to go back and look at the difficulty. And I think I'm kind of being a little forgiving, because I think the difficulty of what they tried to pull here is really, really high. I mean, really high. I'm really enjoying the storytelling narrative. I think a lot of people know that Keanu Reeves was involved in the project, and his likeness and his voice acting is in the project. He's much more involved than I thought. I thought he was going to be like a cameo. No, he's in the game a lot, and I really like how they did that. They had a really cool sort of twist early on in the game that I thought was really cool. The overall plot is compelling and a little different than I expected. I think a lot of the cyberpunk tropes are classics, but that's okay because they haven't really been done in video games as much as they could be. It's like fantasy's been done so much, you kind of know what everything is. Cyberpunk has been done somewhat. There's been some great cyberpunk games out there, but not as much as it could be. So I'm really enjoying that aspect as well. And I have to say, I'm really enjoying the gameplay and the cyberware stuff. So you can alter your character. You level up, of course, just like every other RPG. And when you level, you have all these different skills you can level up. And then inside those, there's perks, which are basically abilities. So think you've got ability trees tied to each one of your character's core stats. And then also the additional part of leveling, which is really interesting in this game, is you have cyberware. So you can augment your body with cyber stuff like replacing parts of your hands, or better eyeball optics, or a better processor in your head that plugs into your brain to do all kinds of cool stuff. And essentially, this gives you the ability to do what they call quick hacks, which are essentially spells in combat, right? So like I can see my opponent across the battlefield, and I can mark in that. Well, I can see a camera, for example, and I can execute a ping subroutine, which will ping the network, but then ping also all the folks tied into the network. And so all of a sudden I can see the silhouettes, even if they're behind stuff, of all the bad guys. Now, of course, they could have routines to try to block that sort of stuff, but then also I can target one of those bad guys. And for example, I can make his, I can make his cyber start to overheat and damage his system, or make his heart race fast and do damage to him. So basically, I'm hitting him with like a spell, right? Think of it that way. But the way they do it, it doesn't feel spell-like. It feels, from a pure mechanics point of view, it feels like you're casting spells and shooting guns and swinging clubs and throwing knives. It's got elements of all that going on in there. And there's a whole stealth tree too. So you can actually level. I didn't even know this was part of the game, but you have melee weapons, close combat weapons, which can be pretty powerful. But then I found out there's a perk that allows you to start throwing knives. And if you hit a guy in the head from behind, you like pretty much one-shot him. So all of a sudden you've got like Assassin's Creed stuff. I found a perk that lets you, if you're above someone, you can drop down on them and take them out, Assassin's Creed style. So you can play the game super stealthy. You can play the game like Rambo, explosive dude with all kinds of body armor and undamageable. So it's got all those different aspects going on too, which I didn't expect, right? And it is a first-person shooter, and I feel like the gunplay mechanics, from my perspective, are very strong and very solid as well. You got smart weapons that can shoot around corners. You got direct fire weapons that are very powerful. You can trick out your cyberware to work better with smart weapons and indirect fire weapons, or better with direct fire weapons, or better with melee weapons. And sort of you're going to build a fighting style / casting style, right? Like I say casting style because you can also level up your abilities around hacking and technology and really be more of a wizard. You're still going to always use a little bit of everything. But I'm much more wizardy, more tech wizardy. Like I can hack my way through doors and hack my way through computers, and I can mess with your cyberware and mess you all up much better than I can brawl, right? I'm not really a brawler, but you could definitely make a character that was totally brawler and not be so good at the hacking, right? So it's got that going on too. I also feel like what I like too is I like games where the dialogue tree is informed by your dialogue options when you're talking to people, is informed by your abilities. I talked a lot about this in Greedfall. Mass Effect's had some of it. A lot of the BioWare games have had this for a long time. They do a great job of this also in Cyberpunk 2077, where you can actually, when you're talking to people, it'll have grayed out conversation options with a stat icon, so you know which stat they're talking about, and a number you could have had. So all of a sudden you're like, oh man, if I was stronger in body, I could have intimidated this guy. Or, ooh, look, because I'm a really good tech person, I can tell this person what you're telling me is BS, and I know for a fact that the software you're describing doesn't work that way, kind of thing. All kinds of cool stuff in there like that, which makes you feel, again, your character background, which you choose, also informs a lot of these sorts of things. Again, that's sort of a Mass Effect sort of a thing. So I really like all that as well. And I can't tell yet how much of some of and there are some decisions you have to make. There are some pretty big decisions you make, but I can't really tell if those decisions affect the overall story arc much, but they certainly affect characters around you, and they affect who's in I think it feels like it affects who's in the lead in terms of gangs and other organizations in the city. So I feel like you can sort of, there's maybe two levels to the game. There's like the main story arc. I can't figure out yet if there's a lot you can do to change that, as much as just color your own perception of it, if that makes sense. But definitely you can affect these secondary story arcs and how much of those you get. And all the side quests have really pretty compelling stories that you can mess up pretty good if you want to. So I thought all that's really interesting too. So I'm really enjoying it, and I think at this stage with the updates they've done, you can see what they were trying to do, and you can appreciate what they were trying to do. And I think many of us will enjoy what they were trying to do. I certainly am. Definitely want to warn you, though, it's not bug-free. It's getting better. I would say it's not bug-free, and I'm playing it on very good hardware, and I'm still under the impression that on lower-end hardware, so like mid-range PCs or last-generation consoles, it's still not a utopian experience. So you gotta kind of go in there knowing that. But if you have good high-end PC, or if you're fortunate enough to have gotten your hands on a PS5 or a Series X, or even a Series S, might be worth checking this guy out. I'm really enjoying it. I do like Cyberpunk a lot. I think if it's your jam and those kind of worlds are your jam, you'll be pretty forgiving of this. And the good news is they have been patching it at a regular pace. And they've said they're very committed to making this game what they always intended it to be. So I'm pretty confident that CD Red will come through on this thing, and eventually it will be what they hoped it to be. I just hope everyone out there can appreciate it, and those of us who do like sort of the cyberpunk sort of visions of how things might be, will get a chance to try this out and really experience their vision. But also their storytelling approach, I think, is really pretty interesting here. And if they can pull this off, I think they're going to set a standard here once they can get there. And the real question is, can they get there before people give up on them? And I don't know. So we'll find out. But that's my thoughts on that. Now, one other video game, I have not played anything else because I've been kind of fiddling with that now for a bit. But Kit got into, I feel like I did just solve another game, though. I can't remember what it was. I'm going to try to remember now, but I can't. You know what it was? It was, I know what it was. Ratchet and Clank on the PS5. That game is really fun. So I don't want to leave our PS5 fans out there. I'm playing Cyberpunk on an Xbox Series X, I said. I also have a PS5. I've been very fortunate to get both those consoles. I just worked really hard to do it, but it was tricky. That was sort of the thing I was doing during COVID when I was sort of bored and looking for things to do. I kind of focused on trying to get those. But anyway, so I have a PS5 also, and I did try out Ratchet and Clank. And I really enjoyed Ratchet and Clank. And actually, I'm not really a Ratchet and Clank connoisseur. I think it's actually the first Ratchet and Clank game I've played to completion. Really great game. Great gameplay. It's, sort of a platformer, very cute, but the way they executed, it really shows off the PS5's capabilities. So I would say if you do get your hands on a PS5 and you're really trying to find a game that really shows off what it can do, Ratchet and Clank is fantastic. Also really good storytelling. They bounce back and forth between a couple different protagonists. And one of the things they really show off in this game is the ability to transition from environments very rapidly. Like whole worlds change instantly because basically the universe is kind of falling apart and there are these rifts in space and time. And so you can bounce around to different universes instantly, like in the middle of a battle. And it's really impressive because the entire world are changing instantly. Whereas most games of this size, they do slow loading as you're walking and stuff. So to be able to do this, normally be loading screens. So it's a pretty impressive, that plus some cool things they do with the DualShock, with the mid trigger pulls. Some of the sound in the DualShock is pretty neat. It definitely shows off some of the things that PS5 can do. It also has great storytelling, albeit very different from how Cyberpunk runs. But again, I would also, if you do get, I wouldn't buy the PS5 just for this game. It's too short. But if you happen to have one and you're looking for some fun, I would highly recommend that also. And then the last game I wanted to talk a little about here before I say goodbye is the game my daughter was super excited to see drop, and it just came out literally this past Friday, and that is Hades on consoles, right? So Hades has been out a little while now on PC. And I think it was on the Switch? I think it might have been on the Switch. But my daughter was very excited because we have Game Pass, and so it's coming on an Xbox Game Pass, and it's been upgraded for X and S. And so she was excited to try that out, and she's been playing that. She started playing that yesterday for a significant amount of time. And I got home and I'm like, hey, so what do you think? She's like, oh, it's so good. It's so good. That's all she could say. And she's a very picky video gamer. Like, she doesn't play lots of video games. She's very, very particular. Like, she'll play a game for like 5 minutes and be like, nope. She was out with Cyberpunk. She played Cyberpunk when it first came out. She's in it for 5, and she's 17, by the way. Cyberpunk is definitely, rated R rated M for mature. But she was into Cyberpunk for like 15 minutes, or maybe an hour or two, and she's like, nah, this isn't my jam. But she loves Hades. And very good things to say about it. And Hades is also, by the way, she did not like Returnal on the PS5, which is a rogue-style game. So Hades and Returnal are both rogue-style games, meaning that you, I think a lot of people know this, right? You start a run, an adventure, usually in a somewhat procedurally generated sort of level, and then you make it as far as you can. But once your character dies, you reset and go back to the beginning and you start all over again. And this is how the game progresses. Now, usually, though, each run, you're going to get some sort of little permanent boost, or an opportunity to get some little permanent boost, so that the next time you start your run, your character is slightly more leveled up. So it's like an RPG. It's called Rogue because back in the day, one of the first games to do this was a game called Rogue, where you just went deeper and deeper into a procedurally generated dungeon. This is back in like ASCII graphic days, actually. So Returnal is the PS5 sort of showpiece that does this. And Hades is now on pretty much everything else, including PS5, by the way, that does this also. I would say it's not even close. Just watching, I've played a bit of Returnal. I tried to like it. The problem Returnal has, I think, is it's a good game. Don't get me wrong. Gameplay's great. But the problem Returnal has is there's not enough advancement each run to keep you engaged. Like the advancement each run is so small and the levels look so similar. And the interactions and storytelling is so minimal that you just feel like you're shooting for shooting's sake. You know what I mean? But in Hades, the art style is just gorgeous, and the character development is just really interesting, and all the other characters, you're Hades' son, right, in the Greek myths, and there's all these other gods and heroes are coming in, and the monsters are just so interesting, and you're also getting new weapons and new abilities each run, so now you want to go back in and try the new weapon or ability you just got again. And they've struck the right balance, I think. Watching her play it, and I haven't played yet myself, so this is not really a me review. It's just her feelings on it. But when my daughter kid is in on a game, I'm pretty confident it's going to be good. So I use her as my tester. She knows this too. She's like, "Oh, Dad, you got to make me play on these games." But Hades, I didn't even tell her about. She was like, "Oh, I'm all on Hades," so she's ready to go. So also, I would recommend checking out Hades. If you haven't already, I'm sure you've heard about it. It got killer reviews, like Game of the Year, like 6 times. This is not a surprise, but I can confirm that my daughter is like, the hype is real. Hades is definitely worth trying out. And it's free on Xbox Game Pass. So if you're a Game Pass owner, you just go owe it to yourself to check out Hades. Well, there you go, folks. That's what I've been achieving in gaming lately. I hope you enjoyed this episode, along with that return to the table of Krosmasters. We'll be back next week with more Roleplay a Charisma. Have a good one, everybody. Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at info@the d6generation.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.